I don't mind calling them out, but Captain Traoré and Burkina Faso, the junta regime.
We back. Yeah, we back. Now, today we're going to be talking about U.S. General Michael Langley and Ibrahim Traoré. Now, we have a video going viral, making the rounds, circulating about General Michael Langley. That's his brother right here to the right. He was speaking to high-ranking members of the U.S. government. And overall, they were talking about basically U.S. geopolitical interests on the African continent, especially as it relates to some of their, competitors and adversaries like Russia and China, things like that. Now, during this conversation, for whatever reason, they were talking about things like natural resources, of course, right? And not only that, but how those natural resources are used, right? The guy who was questioning General Michael Langley, he was asking him, do these natural resources benefit the population? And for whatever reason, General Michael Langley actually decided to single out Ibrahim Traoré and say that he is actually engaged in, I don't want to say it, but basically, corruption, basically saying that the natural resources aren't being used to the benefit of the population. Now, of course, it's ironic, right? Why would the United States be concerned about how another nation is utilizing the resources that was given to them by the creator? But that's besides the point. Now, this clip went viral because out of all the presidents on the continent that you could accuse of being engaged in corruption, to single out Captain Ibrahim Traoré, it took everybody by surprise. But anyways, I'm going to jump into the clip and I'm going to come back on my commentary. Let's go.
I can imagine a situation, though, in which the ruling elite of a country is receiving gratuities on the side that inure to the benefit of the strongman leader and not to the populace of the country. Does that sort of corruption and bribery go on with regard to the Belt and Road?
Absolutely, Chairman. I see this, and I don't mind calling them out, but Captain Traoré and Burkina Faso, as they know that both, whether it's their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime.
All right, we back. Damn, man, damn. My man got in front of the white man. He said, yes, I don't mind calling him out, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. I was like, golly, man. Now, first things first, for those of y'all who may not know who that gentleman was, General Michael Langley, I believe the first black, U.S. four-star general in the Marines. And not only that, but he's actually also the Supreme Commander of AFRICOM. Yes, I know. Very ironic. Yes, they have a black man at the head of AFRICOM. Yes, he is the Supreme Commander of all African operations on the continent for the U.S. government. Now, when it comes to AFRICOM, what they do goes way farther than just, basic military operations or just engaging in combat, right? The main objective of AFRICOM is to protect and enforce U.S. interests, U.S. economic interests, U.S. security interests on the continent. Also making sure that the governments on the continent are open and friendly to U.S. economic interests and geopolitical interests on the continent. And also to make sure that the U.S. government also maintains access to the vast mineral resources that are in the continent as well. So when you see General Michael Langley as the Supreme Commander of AFRICOM, his job is to defend American geopolitical interests on the continent. Now, why is General Langley worried about how Burkina Faso, and by extension the AES, is utilizing their gold reserves? Now, first of all, these nations are extremely rich in gold, right? Overflowing with gold, and have been for many centuries and generations. That region of Africa has always been known for its vast wealth in gold, going back many centuries, going back in ancient texts and ancient stories. That area of the world has always been known for its vast gold. Now, recently, when you take a look at nations like Mali, I made a bunch of videos on that, right? Mali renegotiating contracts with all the companies in the gold sector, even going as far as putting out arrest warrants for the executives and actually arresting executives, right? And as we already know, after renegotiating all the contracts, Mali came up on over $1 billion in a windfall of cash. Now, Burkina Faso have also been making similar moves in the gold sector as well. Take a look up on the screen. This headline came out back at the end of 2023, right? I did a video on it back in the day. Construction of the first gold refinery begins in Burkina Faso. Right, that was about a little over a year and a half ago. Now, a few months after that, take a look up on the screen. I did a video on this as well. Burkina Faso nationalizes UK gold mines, right? So there was this large gold mining company And the government, Burkina Faso, actually, took it back. They took the gold mine back, right? Take a look up on the screen. Burkina Faso will nationalize 2 gold mines at a cost of about $80 million. The mines were sold last year by a London-listed Endeavour Mining to Lilium Mining for $300 million. On August 27th, the mines were purchased by Burkina Faso's government for a fraction of the cost. Gold miners in Mali, which include Barrick Gold, the world's second largest producer of the precious metal, have also faced the threat of the military-led government pushing to increase its ownership of new projects under an updated mining code that was adopted last year. Burkina Faso revised its mining code last year to earn more royalties from mining. Now, as you can see, when you see General Michael Langley, the Supreme Commander of AFRICOM, step in front of high-ranking officials in the U.S. government and actually single out a head of state, actually single out a president on the continent as somebody who he disapproves of, to me, that says a lot. Now, General Michael Langley, he said that Ibrahim Traoré is utilizing his gold reserves to protect his regime and that the natural resources are not being used for the benefit of the population, right? The benefit of the common man and woman, right? Now, like I said, I already gave you his job description. General Michael Langley, he is here to defend American geopolitical interests on the continent. Now, when was the U.S. government or any Western government worried about whether the natural resources on the continent are being used for the people, right? That has never been a factor in their decision making. That is simply a smokescreen, right? It's another version of, we are worried about democracy and freedom, right? No, you're not. You're here you care about your own geopolitical interests. Tell the truth, bro. Tell the truth. And listen, that's fine. As a nation, you are supposed to defend your geopolitical interests, right? But at the same time, Burkina Faso also has a right to defend their geopolitical interests as well. So if you ask me, like I said, that is simply a smokescreen, right? Oh, he's trying to protect his regime, his junta regime, right? Listen, that is a smokescreen. That is another version. That is a brand new, revamped, remixed version of "We are coming to restore democracy," right? Oh, the junta regime. Listen, that is another remix of "We are here to come back and restore democracy." That's the same democracy song they've been singing for decades and decades. The reality is, the United States government and probably other Western governments as well have been seeing the moves that the Sahel states have been making, especially in the gold sector, right? Because a lot of these companies are based in Western countries, right? They're based in Canada, they're based in France, they're based in, London, right? So they're based in all these Western countries. So the moves these guys are making are going to affect the economies of these nations, because these multinational corporations are directly tied to the economies of their home nations. So when they see nations like Mali chasing down the multinational gold mining companies, arresting the executives, right, renegotiating the contracts, when they see nations like Niger taking back the uranium mines, right, and you remember Orano, the French multinational uranium company Orano, after less than 6 months, they got kicked out the uranium mines. The company went bankrupt. They had to get a bailout from the French government, right? So when they see things like this happening, right, multinational corporations going bankrupt, executives getting arrested, being detained for weeks and weeks, if you ask me, that is what they're really concerned about, right? Because they also have investments in the region, right? So they want to make sure their investments are secure. They want to make sure their interests are protected, right? And that's why Michael Langley is in Africa, to make sure those interests are protected. That's why he's sitting in front of this white man, giving him, a detailed account of what's going on in Africa, because that is his job. You're supposed to go to Africa and come back and tell the white man what's going on. Now, let's take a look at some of the reactions on social media. Now, shout out to Julius Malema, right? The EFF down in South Africa. Take a look up on the screen. The EFF strongly rejects recent U.S. Senate allegations against Burkina Faso's president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Let's jump into the article. The U.S. Senate, during a hearing by a representative of the U.S. Africa Command, accused Traoré of diverting Burkina Faso's gold reserves for personal security rather than for the welfare of the people, an accusation the EFF has outrightly rejected. In a statement issued via the official Twitter account, the EFF stated that we condemn the West's continued interference in African nations' affairs and their attempts to control our resources. The EFF supports Captain Traoré's efforts to reclaim Burkina Faso's gold for the benefit of its people and resist neocolonial pressure. The EFF emphasized that African countries must maintain the sovereign right to determine how their resources are utilized without external interference. Now, take a look up on the screen. I've seen this article that pretty much kind of summarized my thoughts on the situation as well, right? This brother said this, the article headline, "Gold and Guns, Why the West Suddenly Cares About Burkina Faso's Treasures." It said this: for decades, African gold has flowed into Western vaults, funding luxurious lifestyles, stock markets, and military-industrial complexes, while the people from whose soil it was ripped remained in poverty. Now, a sovereign African leader chooses to use that same gold to secure his nation's defense and assert independence, and suddenly the U.S. wants to talk ethics. Now, another thing I failed to mention from earlier, take a look up on the screen. The price of gold surges to another record high, right? The price of gold has been going crazy as of recently. I don't know if y'all been, keeping track of the price of gold, but the price of gold been going crazy, right? Now, the timing is interesting because, like I said, nations like Mali, nations like Burkina have been asserting more dominance over their gold supply, while at the same time, the price of gold continues to go higher and higher. And that's why I don't understand why General Michael Langley decided to single out Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Well, I do understand, but it's ironic because his government is not the only government that is stockpiling on gold or is trying to strengthen their gold supply. There's many governments all around the world stockpiling on gold. Now, due to the fact that General Michael Langley, his job is to ensure, security, on the African continent, as he says. One thing I would ask him, especially if he's worried about things like corruption in the gold sector, how come you are not singling out nations like the UAE, right? How come you're going to single out Captain Ibrahim Traoré, but you're not going to mention nations like the UAE, especially due to the fact that they have their hands over so much instability going on all over the continent? Take a look up on the screen. Tens of billions of dollars in gold flows illegally out of Africa every year. The UAE was by far the main destination for the smuggled gold, with some 405 metric tons of undeclared gold from Africa ending up over there. During a 10-year period between 2012 and 2022, the amount summed up to 2,569 metric tons of gold, worth around $115 billion. The report said that the gap between UAE imports and exports from African countries has widened over the years, meaning that the amount of gold smuggled out of Africa appears to have increased over the past decade. For example, it increased from 234 metric tons in 2020 to 405 in 2022. Now, listen, if I was General Michael Langley, I wouldn't be worried about what Ibrahim Traoré is doing, right? If he wants to take the gold mines back, he's well within his rights to do whatever he wants to do. That's a sovereign black man. But I would be worried about what the UAE is doing, right? Because the UAE, they have their hands in all the instability that's happening all over the continent, right? We already know they're one of the main ones supporting those genocidal militia groups down in Sudan, right? The RSF, the Rapid Support Forces, right? The ones, genocided and mass killing. Yes, the UAE, they actually support those genocidal maniacs because they're also smuggling the gold out of Sudan and sending it to the UAE, right? So how come you're not talking about the UAE, Mr. General Michael Langley, Mr. 4-star black general black man? Listen, and it's not only in the Sudan, it's also in the Congo, right? Yes, the instability in the Congo, Congolese gold somehow ends up over in the UAE, right? So, and we don't even got to talk about the instability happening with them terrorist groups in the Sahel, right? Like nations like Mali and things like that. Yes, UAE, they also have their hands on the gold being smuggled illegally out of Mali. So that's why I say, if I was General Michael Langley, the first government I would be calling out, right? The same way you had the confidence of saying, listen, I'm not afraid to call him out. I'm going to call out Captain Ibrahim Traoré. You should have called out Mr. Ahmed Akbar over in the UAE. That's who you should have called out. But instead of calling him out, the United States instead decides to get in bed with their regime. Take a look up on the screen. Just last month, this headline, the UAE commits $1.4 trillion of investment to the United States, right? According to the White House, right? So where you think they got that money from to just be splashing 1.4 trillion? It's off the illegally smuggled African gold, right? But you're not calling that out, Mr. General Michael Langley. But you expect us to believe that you care about the common African man and woman. No, bro, you care about American geopolitical interests, right? That's why they gave you the big title with the big job and the big, the big uniform, right? That's what your job description is detailed for. You are here to defend American geopolitical, economic, and diplomatic interests on the continent, right? And the only reason they gave you that job as the Supreme Commander of AFRICOM was because you were a black man. Now, I don't want to say it, but, some might call you a DEI hire. Now, I wouldn't say that. Right? Because I don't use terms like that. But some people might call you a DEI hire, right? You might have got the job only because you are a black man, right? Assuming that the Africans will be unsuspecting that, hey, I'm a friendly black man. Now, when it comes to General Michael Langley, we have seen his archetype before, right? When I see General Michael Langley, I see men like General Alfred Dods of the French colonial military, right? Take a look up on the screen. Now, during his time, this was deemed as a black man at the head of a European military, right? But of course, what was he doing? He was protecting and defending and enforcing Western geopolitical interests, European geopolitical interests. Take a look up on the screen. Dods was born on February 6, 1842 in Senegal. His father was Antoine Henry Dods, a merchant and director of the St. Louis Post Office, a quadroon of Métis descent, and his mother was Charlotte de la Chapelle, a seigneur of French and African descent. As part of the French colonial army, Dods led a second campaign to subdue the kingdom of Dahomey and its 11th ruler, King Benazin, who was defeated in the decisive Battle of Abomey on November 18, 1892. That defeat meant that he had helped consolidate the French colonial empire in West Africa that now stretched from Senegal and Guinea over 1,000 miles east to the border of British-controlled Nigeria. Dods was promoted to brigadier general and placed in command of the French 8th Colonial Army of 50,000 French troops. Now, when you see guys like Alfred Dods, right, back at the end of the 1800s, and you see guys like General Michael Langley, it's the same archetype. It's the same archetype. And trust and believe, he would have never been allowed to rise to that high of a position without making sure that he is a trusted ally, right, that is down for the job and ready to go out and do the task to his highest capability. So at the end of the day, as black men, we have to understand that black men like this have existed for a very long time, right? For as long as the colonial project has been going on, black men like this have existed, right? And sometimes it's going to be a black man standing opposed to you. It's going to be a black man standing against you. That's simply the reality of the matter. But like I said, General Michael Langley, if you're really worried about corruption and security on the continent, go check out them boys in the UAE, right? That's the word of advice that I would give, right? Go check out them boys in the UAE. You know, I would definitely, you know, keep my eyes on them, right? That's my word of advice. Anyways, it's your boy Nevercard. That's Elaine back in the Billy. Yes, indeed. Cash App in the description. Support the channel. Support the album. Sahel 1816. Go to my homepage or go to my playlist section. Enjoy the album. And I'm gone. Peace.
Told me she loved me and said that it's real. So independent, ain't signing no deal. Feel like a king and I'm up at Cap Henry. I'm in the citadel, top of the hill. Trying to run up and we let off a cannon. Secret location, I'm keeping it sealed. You ain't retaliate, Franco Medina. Came to the country and he got killed. You ain't retaliate, Rafi Mans. Thought you was loyal, thought you was real. Didn't even want to come pick up the body. Had your man locked up, he died in the cell. Up at the palace, I'm throwing a party. Right on the south and I'm giving them hell. And my little shorty, she looking exotic. African features, she casting a spell. Run to the check like I work on my fitness. Wake up each morning and handle my business. Said that she love me, she want my genetics. Wanna get married and make it official. Wanna get married and have my babies. Up in the city, I'm riding Mercedes. Up in the city, they treat me like royalty. Feeling like Dolph, talking about lords. Spreading my wings and I had to get fly. Up at the top, an incredible vibe. Came from the bottom, I'm up in the sky. Everyone look and said, baby, you fine. Wake up each morning and handle my business. They just be talking, you see me, I live. Ride on my enemies, sounding like thunder. 1804, got that shit in my spirit. 1804 when I step in the building. 1804, that's word of my mother. Rock my women and die for my brother. Never gonna fall when I'm deep under pressure. Tell them we back and they better accept it. Move like a king, every step is divine. Ride on my enemies with no exception. Taking revenge and I'm taking what's mine. Pour up a drink and it's time that we toast. Watching my back, keep my enemies close. Only the family, I stick with my brothers. Cannon's position outside of the coast. Heavy artillery for the protection. Move like a general, stick to the code. Feel like a king when I'm up in the north. Beautiful women, they trying to get chose. Launch an invasion all over the south. Capture the capital with all my woes. Look at my energy and my demeanor. Dripping that ice and that's head to my toes. Lately I'm flexing all on the Americans. Flexing my muscle on missing my road. Just got a carriage just coming from London. Boy, that shit cash, I ain't taking no loans. Boy, that shit cash, that's fresh on the boat. Enemy know I got millions in gold. Enemy know I got choppers and cannons. How did I do it? They can't understand it. How did I do it? It's cause I'm relentless. Call me King Harry, my name is cemented. Call me King Harry, I'm up in the palace. Call me King Harry, I'm raising the status.